Mounce, BBG, Chapter 19, Sentence 5 starts with something hopefully you're very, very familiar with and recognize as something you've read a zillion times. Amen, hopefully you recognize as truly or verily, depending on whether you're a KJV person or not. I would probably go with truly, truly, and then lego, I say. Hopefully you know that verb. And then humin, second person plural, personal pronouns. So you've got two y'all. So truly, truly, I say to y'all. And then hati, and again that collocation rule, that kind of idea of how do you translate hati? Is it either that or because? Because if it's giving a reason, and in this case it's not that when it is introducing indirect discourse or it follows a verb of communication or cognition. In this case it is introducing indirect discourse. It's what he's telling them. I'm saying to you X, and the hati marks the X. So, again, whichever way you want to say that, the bottom line is when it functions, when it follows verb of communication, which it does here, then you're typically going to translate it as that. So, truly, truly, I say to you that, and then if I comes an hour, and now it is. All right? If I treated that sentence right there just as word by word, it's, hopefully not difficult for you. But again, we're going to do a little gymnastics and say an hour, and again, indefinite, right? So, because you have no definite article here, so an hour comes and now is, because you've already, spelled out what you're talking about here with hour. All right. Hopefully you know hate is when, and then you have Koine Greek, this subject and verb here. Interesting deal here is you need to, you obviously recognize this is probably the subject, right? Because of the nominative plural ending. Nekros is dead. The trick here is that you should recognize that nekros is not a noun, it is an adjective. But when you have a definite article, like you do here, that tells you that this adjective, in the absence of any noun that it is qualifying, is functioning as a substantival adjective. So, in certain contexts, you might want to say like when the dead ones, when the dead people, something like that. But, we all use as sort of a well-known phrase, the dead. We talk about the dead. But technically that is an adjective, not a noun. So, I would want you to recognize that that is a substantival adjective. It's functioning as a substantival adjective if you were to be asked something like that on an exam. All right, then you got your verb. Akuo, hopefully, is here. But then you have, your ending, third plural, right? Osa, amineti, usi. There's your usi with the movable nu. So third plural, but then you also have that, try it again. There you have that sigma again. So it tells you that it's future. So they will hear, but of course third plural lines up with Koine Greek. In which case you have when the dead will hear. Then go up to the chi so that you can split the sentence. And the problem that you're going to have is you're going to look at tes phones as the voice, and you're going to say, well, wait a minute, if that's the direct object, why is it in the genitive? And hopefully you recognize that as a genitive. Well, the reason is that akuo is one of those strange verbs that actually takes its direct object in the genitive. You may remember that verbs of communication and cognition often take their verb in the dative, their direct object in the dative. And that's a very common collocation rule in Greek. Well, another one is that akuo can, not always, but can take its direct object in the genitive. And that's what you have. So you're going to translate it, even though it's a genitive, you're going to translate it as a direct object because it follows akuo. And again, that's a collocation rule. The verb akouo can take its direct object in the genitive. All right. So when the dead will hear the voice, and then if you just roll with these genitives of the Son of God, and that's probably the way I would just, the voice of God's Son, if you wanted to go with the NIV kind of feel. But, Son of God is what we normally say in English quite often in the church. So when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and then you have and then what you have is technically a substantival participle, which you haven't gotten to yet. That's why he's translating it. I would tell you that Mounce is going to say something like the ones who hear it. Ones who hear it. But my problem is when I run into a participle of any kind, I'm just always wanting to toss an ing in there. And it just keeps it closer to the whole participial idea, and that's what I've done. And you're going to see me do from now on. It's going to be a place where I diverge from what you see in the workbook and what you see Mounce doing. So bear with me there. But again, I'm trying to help you and trying to keep that participial idea when I do that. Which at this point you haven't even had yet, but I'm just explaining why you're going to see this looking different than it does in Mounce. So anyway, this tells you that this is substantival, bottom line, kind of like this tells you it's a substantival adjective. This tells you that this is a substantival participle. So it's the ones hearing it, and then you have that final verb. Again, with your third plural ending with the movable nu, so that's they something, and then you have this sigma, and hopefully you recognize zao as the verb. It's I live, but in this case you have third plural and a future, so it's they will live. Okay, so that lines up with this substantival. So you have for this last clause, and the ones hearing it will live. So let me run over it one more time just so you see it as a whole. Truly, truly, I say to y'all that an hour comes, and now is, when the dead, and of course, substantival adjective, will hear the voice of the Son of God, and the ones hearing it will live.